Good afternoon. This is Everetts Watercolors. Welcome to my studio. Now today we're going to do a landscape together. I want to invite all the artists out there to join in with me. This is just a paint along that we can do together and have some fun. And if you've got pencils, that's fine. If you got color pencils, that's even better. And your watercolor paints, they'll all work today. So I'm going to take you over to my painting table and let me show you how we're going to get started. Now this is the sketch that I had on my downloadable link in the description of the video. And it has a small house, and this building here could be a barn, a house and a barn. I have a large tree, and then I have a roadway coming along the side over here. And there's a sky in the background. So that's the elements in today's painting exercise. But what I usually do is I take the downloadable link, the sketch here, and I have other downloadable links on my website that you can download and paint along on the other paintings that are there. You ought to try that one out. But what I do is I take this sketch and I'll print it off the printer, and then I'll make extra copies. For example, this one here is a copy I made, and here I used a pencil and I darkened in the areas. This is I really made on the second sketch here. I really did a value study. This is where I'm going to put the dark areas up here in the tree, along the shadow area, the shadows on the buildings, the shadows on the ground. So this kind of gives me a planning area where I'm going to put my darker colors in the painting. So that's step number 2. After a sketch, I do a value study off the same sketch. And then I do a second copy I made. I used watercolor pencils here. You can use color pencils or even crayons. And here is a color sketch. And right here, I was playing around with what colors I'm going to use in my composition. And what I decided to do was the buildings here, I'm going to use primarily warm colors, which are reds and browns, maybe a little bit of purple here and there. But the warmer color here of red is going to show up here. And opposite to that is going to be the cooler colors, the greens, the blues and the greens, a little bit of yellow mixed in there, and then the shadow pattern across the ground. So I've done actually a color study using watercolor pencils or color pencils. We work the same. So that's always a good idea to, after you've done a sketch of your composition, is to make a couple copies and then play around with the shadows and then play around with the colors you're going to use. Because they're just as important as the sketch, and of course very important when you do the painting. Okay, let me move over to the close-up camera. I want to show you something else. Now this is a sketch that I did on watercolor paper. This is about an 8 by 10 size watercolor paper, and it's 140 pound Gemini watercolor, archival watercolor paper. It's about the only watercolor paper I really use for my paintings. Now I made a couple additions to my particular sketch. I sketched from the plan sketch I showed you, but I made this building a little taller. I moved the window up here to the top instead of behind. I added a chimney to the small house. I thought it'd be an interesting, because I wanted a better way to overlap these two shapes. And then I extended a small building to the other side of the tree. On the tree, I added another limb. So if you look at the sketch that I provided in the download, you'll see I've made some modifications here. Minor modifications, but those are the things you can do as an artist. You can take a sketch or a photograph and make all the changes you want to before you start painting. Okay, let me move that over to my painting table. Okay, now let's go over the material I have here that I'm going to use. I got my paper with my sketch. I've got a 1/2 inch watercolor brush, natural hair. I have a 3/4 inch flat brush, natural hair. I have a medium round brush, which I'll use for some detail. And I've also introduced, I'm going to introduce, this is a small flat brush. I don't use this very often, but I may use it today. Now my colors, I start out with burnt sienna down here at the bottom. Then I have yellow ochre. Now, I may use a little bit of yellows when I mix the greens. And also I have pyro red. And up here is a glycerin crimson, which is a very dark red. And over here I've got cobalt blue mixed out. And I'll introduce some more colors as I get down, when I get the greens out and so forth for the trees. But these are the colors I'm going to use on the building. And I'm going to start with the building first, because the building is my area of interest. Okay, it's my impact area. It's my focal point. It's called several things: focal point, impact area, center of interest. But it's the area you want to have your eyes go to in the painting. And it's located above the halfway point and over to the left. So it's not in the center of the paper. All right, I'm going to start out with the red. I'm going to make this a red building and a red barn. So let me turn the page a little bit so I get an angle here. I'm going to start putting the red. Now this is like a medium red color. It's not too dark, not too light. And also, I always have a test sheet when I paint. Little corner out here. There's a little piece of I put the little building behind the tree, and I moved a little part out to the side. Now let me pick up this smaller brush with burnt sienna, and I don't like to use one color everywhere. What I'll do is take the burnt sienna and I'll put that in on top of that red in certain places, just to give it a change in color. A little variety of color. Okay, now while I've got that paint on the brush, I'm also going to put it on the barn. So I'll go back here. Now this barn is a little further away, so the colors are going to be a little bit lighter. Not much lighter, but a little bit lighter. And this flat brush works very good along edges. You use the corner of the brush, the side of the brush. Now those of you who are painting, you can start here on the building like I am. I recommend the building. This is where the main interest is going to be. So I always start there, where I'm going to have the story of the painting here is about a barn and a farmhouse, a little piece of land out in the country somewhere, with a little country road running down. There's a little pasture out there, a little farm with some vegetables in the garden. As I come down here, I'm going to continue on with this red. Now I may leave the barn a little bit redder now than I remember I put the burnt sienna on the other one. I may leave this and again. This will give me a different color. This is lighter. This will be a little bit darker with that. Okay. Now let's work on let's talk about direction of light. In my color study, I decided to make the lighting come from left side across to the right side. So all the darker sides are going to be on the right hand side of the building, and the shadows are going to fall this way coming down. So now I'm planning the shadow pattern from the drawing I did, the pencil drawing. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of darker. So I'm going to take that red and mix it in with a little bit of this glycerin crimson. And let me start here with the barn. And you'll see here it's a much darker value. And I may pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and mix in with that, because I want that to be a dark shadow against that light. And then I'll paint up here on this side. And I have two doorways, but I'm going to paint around those, and I may leave those white. This is the impact area, so I'll leave a little more white paper here showing than in the rest of the painting. I like to leave a lot of whites anyway. They make the painting a little more interesting. Now I'm going to wipe out my brush, and I'm just going to drag that paint now, because what I'm doing now is I'm putting in the value change on this building. Because as you go back from this edge back, it gets lighter because it's further away. So I'm just going to use that same paint and just kind of spread it out while it's still wet. So I took the paint out of the brush first, then I just moved this paint over here using that color that's already on the paper wet, and move that. Now when that dries, you'll see this will be lighter than this section here. If it's not dark enough, then I can always add more on. Okay, the little house up here, I'm going to give it a shadow. So I'm going to add the darks here to the shadow side of the little house. And I may mix a little bit of blue in with this, because I want this to be much darker. So I'm taking this Alyssum Crimson, I'm adding a little bit of blue, which will make it almost a violet or a purple, but it'll be a very darker, a much darker purple, because it's got the darker red, which is Alyssum Crimson. Okay, the same idea. I'm going to start with a very dark edge here. I may put a little more red in that, a little more. There's too much purple, so I'll mix in a little bit of burnt sienna. As you paint along, you make adjustments to the color. You don't have to stay with the same color while it's still wet. You can add in another color on top of what you did. There's no rules there. You just what you feel like as an artist. Now what I'm going to do now is keep this color going. Yeah, that's nice and dark. Now I may pick up a little more blue now. So see, I'm changing the colors as I go along. Here I'm adding more blue to this section over here. I don't keep the same color of my brush very long. I move that color when I see it change. Usually when I go back to the palette, I'll change color. That's usually a good idea. When you reach for the palette to fresh your paint out, pick up another color. Don't use the same one. It's a very boring painting to have the same colors everywhere. You want to have a variety of colors. Now you want to stay within the same, blues and reds, and they all match together because they're very analogous paintings. Okay. Now while I'm here, I'm going to pick up another brush. Let's see. I'm going to take that shadow pattern now, which is that blue mixed in with the dark red, Alyssum Crimson. And remember the shadow, the direction of light. The light's coming across here, so I'm going to put in a little shadow pattern right here while I'm here. This little shadow will come down from the top of this roof onto the barn, because they're separated, but the light's going to come through there because there's a little space there, but it's going to cast a shadow on this. The building's going to cast a shadow here on the barn. So I'll put that in while I'm right here with the same color. A little bit of quinacridone violet was in there. So what I'll do is it's a little bit bright, so I'm going to just dull that down with a little bit of blue. Going to add a little blue to that quinacridone violet to make it a little bit darker, not so bright, because it's a shadow. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Okay, you can see the shape of that shadow. And the shadow will be a little darker down here at the bottom, a little lighter as it comes across, but it gets darker as it hits toward the ground surface. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now on the house and the barn, I'm taking a lot more time on because remember, this is the impact area. This is the area you want to have the best part of your painting is here. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here in a little more detail. And I'm using a smaller brush. I'm using this round brush with a nice sharp point. Now I'm painting the shadow side of the chimney, which is going to be darker than the other side. This is the part that's away from light, so it's going to be a little bit darker. The fun part about painting and painting and working in art is you play with the lights and darks, and you can follow the direction of light on the buildings, on trees, whatever, but it gives you a wonderful opportunity to observe where the light is, how would you interpret the light, how do you interpret the light, and it's a complete, really I've found it to be a complete study over the years of practicing, is the study of light. It's so fascinating. And what I may do, let that dry a little bit. You'll see how that comes. Okay, it's a dark brick surface. Now, if things get a little too dark, and I may leave it alone. But let's see. If things get dark on you, then it's time to make a little modification. I'm going to take a little Kleenex here, and just pick up a little bit of that paint, and I can adjust the color right there, just like that. Okay. So that the lighter side is on the sun side and the darker side is on the shadow side. And that works for me. Okay. And also I want to, there's a shadow here on the rooftop, so I'm going to put that in also while I'm here. And then we'll move on to something else. But I'm going to pick up a little bit of this blue. It's in the shadow, so it's going to be cool. Shadows are always cooler than the part that's facing the sun. So I'm going to put this little dark piece in here, which is the shadow on the eave of that building, the small building. Okay, we'll let that set in. And believe it or not, there's more shadows. You're going to have more fun to paint shadows in here. Someone told me they had a problem with shadows, and I think that this would be a good example of how to paint shadows, in fact, on a building. So I'm going to put this shadow here, cast from the rooftop, goes across the building. Underneath the roof eave, there's a shadow that's cast down on the side. And up here on the barn, there'll be a cast shadow from the roof. And I'll put that in. And I don't think I need to put one. I'll just put the shadow on this one, because I'm looking at, from my viewpoint, this side of the roof I don't see the shadow because the eave is covering it up. So I'm going to leave that alone. My interpretation. Okay, that's an artist's choice. Okay. The rooftops, I can put those and get those. I can wait till a little bit later, but I think I'll go ahead and start playing with those. I'm going to mix up a light gray with cobalt blue, mixed in with a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'll make a light gray. I'm going to make a slate roof, or a shingle roof, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to put it in gray. And I'm going to use this small brush that I have here, and I'm going to drag that down in a pattern that maybe give a little bit of indication that there's a shingles or roof tiles or something up there. You know, most of the part about painting is not to have so much detail, but to have the impression of what's there. It's not necessary to paint all the detail, but just paint enough to make it a believable story. that this roof is made out of some kind of material, possibly tile. And what I'm going to do here also, remember I mentioned the part about the side. I'm going to make this front edge a little darker. The front edge of the roof I'm going to make a little darker, and as I go back, I'll take the paint out of the brush and I'm going to just pull this paint along, and the back side now toward the back is going to be lighter because there's very little paint in the brush. I'm just using what paint is on the roof right now. And I can always darken this up later if I decide. But there I get a nice little transition of dark here, and it gets lighter as I go away because I'm further away back on the back edge. Dark back to light. Gives me a sense of depth. Okay, and this other building up here in the front, I can do a similar one, except I'm going to change the color. I'm going to put a little more brown in it. This could be maybe a wooden type roof. There's roofs that have wood slats. I don't know what they're called, but they're tile made out of wood. You know, I know the old log cabins years ago, that's all they had was wood, so they put wood on them, and they lasted a long time. The old log cabins were around for a long time, and some of them are still around, and they still have wooden roofs, so it must be good. So I'm going to put a little bit of, change the color. Again, this is, I don't want to have the same color as that roof. That roof is grayer. I'm making this a little warmer color, which has got a little more brown in it. The brown's a little warmer than the gray. Just a tint, and that's all it takes. And I'm going to leave a little roughness on this one. This one I left it smooth, but this one I'm going to leave a little rough. Again, just for variety. I want a variety of texture. I want a variety of what it looks like. I want a variety of what the material could be. These could even be wooden shingles. There could be shingles. You make up your own story. You make it whatever you want to have there. And as long as you have a good reference, you've got a picture of something, or you've seen something that looks like that, then you can make up your own story. You can make up your own idea of how you want to paint it. Now there I made that look a little rough. And remember, this is in the light, so the light's also reflecting off of some of those shingles. So some of them are lighter, some are darker. And that's part of the story. Part of the story is, what is the sun? Where's the sun hitting that particular part of the building? What does it look like? Well, as an artist, you have to make that up yourself. You have to decide how you want to paint it, what colors you want to use, how dark do you want to make it. Wow, look at all the decisions. I mean, yeah, I think the biggest part I like about art is the problem solving. Every art project you have, you'll have a problem. And the problem is how to decide what color to use, how dark to make it, how big to make it, where to put it. So all those problems are solved by the artist. And everybody has their own interpretation. Okay, now I'm done. I've done almost 90% of the building. I'm going to let that dry. Now I'm going to mix up my next colors, which are greens. And of course there's a lot of greens in this. I got the tree and I've got the grass. So about 65% of the painting is going to be green, or pretty green. So here's how I mix up greens. I have greens in my palette, but I use very little of the palette green. I use a little bit, but more importantly, I use the mixtures of greens. And blue and yellow makes a nice green. I'm going to make up another kind, which you probably have never heard of. I'm going to make up another green. So I'll start with the cobalt blue, mixed in with the lemon yellow, and I'll put that up here. That'll give me a nice light green. That's where I'll probably put that in the sunlit area. The lighter green will be in the sunlight. And in the shadow sides, what I'm going to do is, see, I can go ahead and add, I could add just the, what I'll do, maybe I'll bring up my go-to green, which is Hooker's green, but look how green that is. So I'm going to knock that down with a little bit of blue. I want that to be more cooler. I want it to be cooler than that. That's cool, but I want it cooler. Adding blue to something cools it down even more. But I want it dark, so I'm going to add blue to it. So it's going to be a dark blue green. Okay, that's the second one. Now I've got peacock blue back here. Peacock blue's got a little bit of green in it. But I'm going to mix that with my brown, which is burnt sienna. And now I'm going to make a green out of that. That makes even a darker green. Now, if you want to see that green, let me put it on a test sheet. Look at that green. See how dark that? Look how rich that green is. That's a beautiful green. Okay. And let me use that. Let me leave that brush there because that's going to be my big brush. My middle brush, I'll put the Hooker's green in there. Put that little bit of blue in it. See, I still had red in my brush, so it mixed it in with a green. It gives me a bad gray. Okay, there's the middle tone green right there. We're using the Hooker's green. And then the smaller area, not really smaller, but the lighter area is going to have the yellow in it with the cobalt blue, and that's going to be my lighter green. Okay, so I have a light, middle, and dark value of green, and there's also the mixtures above those together give me more green. So I got quite a variety of greens here, which is what I want. Because the idea of this painting is there's so many greens that if you just did one green, it wouldn't work out very well as a painting. I think I'll start with the lighter areas. Remember, the light's coming from this direction, so here's a bush here, or a small tree. I'm going to put the tops of those tree or bush. I'm going to use the lighter green to show the tops, right there. And I'll come down about 1/3. Remember, even photographers and artists all use the same ratio. They use the rule of thirds. You never go just halfway. You go either 1/3 or 2/3. Even in photography, you always go a little bit more than halfway, which is 2/3. In this case, I'm going to have 1/3 light, and in the shadow side, I'm going to have 2/3 darker. And really, at the bottom, I'm going to have just a little bit of the much darker. So as it gets down into the shadow area, or the bottom of this bush, I have a graduation of color from light to middle to dark. And when it dries, it'll all merge together. Okay, this big tree up here, I think I'll start with a light color again. Keep my brushes organized. I have one brush in each color here, so that way I keep my brushes organized. And if I had one brush, I'd have to keep washing it out. So this way I can be more productive by using 3 brushes. Again, I'm going to put the lighter color here where I think the light's coming in, and it's going to be on the front edge of this tree. So that's going to have the lighter value. And not all the way. I'm not going to outline the tree that way. So I'm going to leave that, maybe go a little darker there. Then over here I might pick up a little more light on this side. So again, I'm not going to, if I made that yellow same, it would look like an outline. but I'm going to have a broken outline. I'm going to have a little bit there, maybe a little bit here, and maybe because the sun might be coming through, might be hitting there here a little bit more. So again, I'm making up a story. Okay, where is the sun coming from? It's coming in here and hitting the branches, reflecting off the green trees. They're lighter here. Let's see, maybe because there's more sun over here, what I'm going to do is also I'm looking at the sizes and the shapes here. I'm going to leave some white paper showing too. I don't have to cover, I don't like to block in. If you notice here, I left some white space, a little sparkle. So the white, that's the color that's not in my palette. The color of white comes from the paper. And so I'm using the advantage of that white paper to give me another color that's more interesting. Now what I did there is I made sure my shapes were a little bit different sizes. This is a larger shape, it's closer to the light. I have a little small shape, it's a little more in shadow. There's a little bit here peeking out. Then I have a medium-sized shape over here. So I've been able to not have a continuous area but broken up, but I have different sizes of those clumps of light value. Okay, that's another good art form. Okay, now beyond that now I'm going to start putting in the darks, because I want the tree here to show off a little bit. So I'm going to put the darks right behind those lights. These are the shadows, and I'm using that dark mix. This is that color I showed, peacock blue mixed in with burnt sienna. Now that is an unusual combination to make green, but it works. Look how rich that is. It's really an olive color. Really, it'll be nice for evergreen trees, for a winter scene in the snow with evergreen trees. This really makes an impressive color to use. Now also, look, I'm painting upside down. I'm painting upside down. This way I can look at the pattern a little easier, and I can make judgments. This is another pointer I would have for any artist, is to turn your painting upside down sometimes, and your designs of where you are with your brush strokes and shapes become an abstract value, and you don't see a lot of detail. All I see is the shapes here, making sure that they're all different in different lengths. So painting upside down is a good idea for an artist to have. Just turn your painting upside down and take a look at it and make sure all your values. You could also look into a mirror and get the negative side or the back side of a painting. That may help also. And what that does, it gives you another viewpoint of your art. Are the shapes good? The different angles, different sizes. It gives you another perspective. Yeah, I'm using a bigger brush now, and later on you'll see me using another the other kind of brush. Okay, look at that. Wow. Yep. Yeah, let me see. Now, while that's still wet, I may still play with that a little bit, but I'm going to leave that one leave it alone right now. All right, I just got two more little trees back here. Now, these are really light back here. I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to use the round brush. But I have two trees here side by side, and before I do that, though, there's a little background area. That's going to be really muddy, so I'm going to take my green and mix it in with a red. That'll give me a gray, a warm gray. I mixed the red, pyro red in with the green I have here. And this is called a palette gray. I mean, I just mixed in the two colors off the palette, not really trying to worry about it. I'm going to put that gray back here because that's really far away. That's really the background, trees way in the background. So there's really no definition there at all. It's just a shape it's really a color, just a color back there, and it just indicates that there's something behind in the rear. And I might put a little bit of green in it just to give it a greenish color gray, if there's such a word. I took the gray and just added some green on top of it, which gives us a green color, a very, very light value. As I come closer to the building here, I want to make it a little bit lighter than the building so it stands out. Here I'm checking my values. In order for the building to remain defined, I'm going to make sure that little shape or color there is lighter than the building. I want the building to be darker, and I just did that. Okay, now these two little trees, not going to spend much time on them, but what I want to show you here is that I've got two shapes. I'm going to take the yellow green, yellow mixed in with that blue. I even picked up a little bit of green number 1, and I'll make this little tree, the one here, I'll call it in front. I'm going to make that greeny, more green, light green. And I'm going to leave some white paper showing, give me a little interest in the variety. And behind it is going to be Big Brother, which is going to be a darker green. So I'm going to use a little bit of this darker green I used in this other tree, but not as dark. I have lots of water in the brush, so when I add water to a color, it lightens it up. And I also can take a little bit of color off with a tissue. So this one here, again, I'm going to leave white paper showing. I want a little bit of sparkle back there, even though it's way off in the background. I want to be consistent among all my parts. Everything's going to have a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white paper showing, as just to show more interest back there. But it's enough design at that point. It's so far away, it doesn't matter. I pick up some burnt sienna here and just kind of put the foam here. I'll put in the one tree is a little bigger than the other, so its trunk's going to be a little bit larger. Okay, there, that's done. Okay, now I'm going to work on this tree. I got the leaves done up here, started to. Now, before I leave it, if I see, now I've been watching the colors up here, and what I see is it's starting to dry, and it's still a shine starting to go away. I'm going to take my dot spray bottle, my palette in the bottle, with just water in it, and I'm going to spray some dots of just plain water. Now, what that's going to do is going to create texture up in that area. It's going to give little blossoms, but it'll give the impression of leaves, and that's what I want. I'm looking for an impression, not detail, just an impression of leaves, the little shapes up in there. Okay, all right. So you have to time that. When the paint gets dry enough, when it shines, starts to go away, that's when you start adding paint or water or something on top. Before that, it just blends in with what's there. Okay, now I'm going to mix up colors for the tree trunks. I'm going to use a little bit of this color I have down here already, which is burnt sienna, with a touch of blue. Again, I modify the color slightly. I don't want to have I don't use the pure palette color. I always mix in it with another color. So here I'm going to, again, the shadow side is going to be a little darker. Let me turn around so my brush stroke's a little easier here. Maybe I'll use the other brush. Got lots of brushes, different sizes, different shapes. I'm going to load up when I load up a brush, I use both sides. Use the side of the brush. And when I paint this, I can probably go right along the side of this. I'm going to paint the edge of this dark, because this is the shadow side. The part away from the path of light. And this side over here, side I'll put this is inside. This is the shadow side. Even this limb here, going up into the leaves. Okay. Now what I do is take another brush while it's still partially damp, and I'm going to soften that edge. I don't want to have a hard edge on this side. I want to have a soft edge. And I'm going to pick up a little color now along with that damp brush. And this color, I picked up a little bit of yellow ochre. So it's a yellow ochre tree with a darker shadow. So I have a wet brush. I'm softening up that dark brown edge, but I'm also at the same time adding color to the light side. And I decided to make the lighter section a little bit larger than the shadow side section. Again, I don't want to be half and half. I don't want to cut that shape in half with even a brush stroke. I want to be, again, different sizes of that. Okay, that's coming. That's working really nice. I like what's happening there. Okay, take this on up into the tree. And this trunk here is still up there. Some of this, I may add a little shadow to this because inside the leaf pattern there'll be a shadow coming down on the trunks. So I'll probably put that in also. And this is the shadow side of the tree, more or less, because it's away from light. So I'm going to make this dark over here. This I left lighter because it's in the path of light. But back here, away from the sun, it's going to be a little bit darker. Again, I'm playing with the fact that there's light and shadows on this particular shape. I'm going to darken, as I still got paint in the brush, I'm going to darken up this edge even more. Because I want to separate the, now see I'm making it dark because I want to make sure I separate that from the building. I notice the building color is lighter, so I'm making this a little bit darker to stand out from the building. Again, I'm making an adjustment. While it's still wet, it's easy to add paint on top. And I think I'll put a little more shadow right here from the leaves coming down. I'll make a little more shadow up here. And this one over here needs a little more shadow. And even this limb's going to pass the shadow up here a little bit on this part of the tree. A little bit of shadow from that part there. And then I'll take the brush. It's still damp, and I'm going to brush along there and smooth out, or not smooth, but blend out some of that color so there's not a sharp edge, but a gradual blending of those colors. Okay. Now you can see up here, let me bring it up. You can see, I'll bring up, look at those leaves up there from the dot spray. See that? See how the leaves now are forming from that spray bottle? That gives you, I'll give you the texture up here in the leaves. Okay. Now the last part here is the ground, and it's going to be pretty easy here to put the grass in. Let me remix some of my colors. They're getting a little bit dull here, so let me remix some more colors. This was the yellow mixed in with the blue. This green looks okay, and the darker green, yeah. So I'm going to start back here. This is going to be part of the shadow of the tree, so I really don't concern myself too much about the green, because it's going to be in shadow. And as I come out of the sunlight here, I'm going to put a little more a little more color into a little more yellow into the mix, so that the color becomes a much brighter. And I'm near the center of interest, so that yellow now would be a nice add to this particular part of the painting. A little bit of patch of yellow, because that's where the sun's coming through. A little patch of sun coming through that area, hitting the ground. Okay. But then as it goes down, possibly going down, it's going down a hill here. It's going to go into shadow. So I'll bring the color down across this area. So there's a little shadow pattern falling down because of the hill. Then over here, I'm going to get the middle green. I think I'll start over here. This is the outside of the painting, so it's not. You don't want too much. You don't want too much attraction over here. So this is just going to be a middle value green. Even back here. I think I'll make this a pasture. I was going to make a small field back there, but it doesn't. It's not big enough to make a statement. So I'm just going to make it a pasture. Use a smaller brush, I can handle it better. Now I want that to be lighter, so what I'll do, I've got the paintbrush here. I lift some of that color up as I go around this area. Okay. As I come forward, I'll get a little bit darker on the grass, so I'll come in here with a little bit darker color. And I want it to be rough. I don't want it to look too smooth at this point. I just want to have it rough brush strokes, leaving white paper showing. And over here, same idea. Now this grass is a little bit closer to us, so that it's going to look a little richer color, and that's okay. The grass will look a lot greener coming forward. So the colors get duller as you go back into their distance, and they get brighter as they come forward, which makes gives you the sense of depth in the painting. Okay, I just blocked in. I'll go back and work a little bit more on the grass right now, but right now let me get some of the shadows in. I see a shadow over here. I'm going to come across here with a little more blue. So right here, I'm going to go in. Now I'm painting the shadows now of these buildings. The shadows falling on this grass. We'll cast a shadow. This so here will be a little bit darker here because it's in shadow. I'll bring this down. This is a shadow from the change in the topography. The hill is a little bit rounded here, so it's going to have a slight change in value as it comes down. And this one forward here will also have a little bit of change. Just a little bit. Okay, now I want to get the road in, and I will be almost finished. So I'm going to, some of this brown, I'm going to leave the back area white, and then I'll come in with a little bit of yellow ochre. I'll pick up a little bit. I'll get darker as I come forward. As I come forward on the road, I'll get a little bit darker. I'm going to leave more white space showing to show a little texture, a little roughness. Now pick up a little bit of blue, maybe a little bit of quinacridone violet in the foreground. Well, so you put something down, you don't like it, you pick it right up. I want it to be a little bit warmer than that. That was too gray. Here's my test color. Okay, that's much better. So here I'm going to lay the brush down. Now load the brush with paint. I take out some of the moisture on a sponge so it's a dry. And now when I prim forward and lay the brush flat, I'm going to get a dry brush, which will give me that texture I'm looking for. Okay, with lots of white space. Okay, a couple little touch-ups here. There's a fence here. I put a couple of fence posts. I'm going to put some gray in there on top of that. Okay, at this point, let me take a look at it. We're not going to. Yeah, there's some things I want to make changes on here, but I want to keep the time down so that I don't overdo this. But the grass is probably the most important part here. And what we do is we just go in here with a brush with some kind of paint. This is going to be a light or medium value. And what we do is just kind of blend in get the white paper. I'm just eliminating some of the white paper. I'm going back in now and just eliminating the white paper, which means I just go along the edges and use what paint's there and blend out the whites. Just cover the whites with what colors right there. That'll make it work. And over here, now here I can make this one. I can put some grass, showing grass along the edge. Again, all I'm doing is blending what colors are there. I've got a damp brush with a little bit of paint in it, and I'm just going. These are rough to show grass. So I'm eliminating some of the white areas. That's all I'm doing. Just kind of blending in the colors are there with a little bit of paint on the brush. And working on the edges. Okay. And I can go back here and I can fill in some of these areas. Just kind of, again, knocking down some of the whites. That's all I'm doing. And along the roadway, I could put maybe little dark spots. Just little dark spots. Yeah. This is an old dirt road, so I'm making like where the edge of the road is going to be a little bit darker, a little bit in shadow. Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to show also is in the using the dot spray bottle again. This is with burnt sienna in it. I'm going to put some dots here in the bottom third. And I'm spraying dots down on the road top, and that will give me an impression of rocks or stones or whatever on the road. Okay, I really like that. And maybe a splatter of water down there. It kind of changes dots a little bit. You can make them into your regular spots. So there could be little darker dirt areas and so forth. The last thing I had to show was the shadow pattern. And what I want to do here is on the tree. I'm going to take a dark blue with a green. is where this line was is what I was going to put. I was going to put a shadow pattern because I was going to cover up that area. So I used green because green is the green of the grass, and I put a little bit of blue in it to darken it up to give it a shadow look. And then as I come across the road, I'm going to use the brown. Mixed in a little bit of blue. And that's going to be the shadow going across the dirt road. And it will level out a little bit here. And going across the other side. Might signify that there's an angle from a branch or part of the tree. As I get to the other side, use some more of that darker green, and I can put in some of the shadows from the leaves that's reflecting on the other side of the road. Now the only part I've left out is the sky, and I can put that in pretty quickly also. I'm going to mix a little bit of cerulean blue, which is a good sky color. And you mix up enough to cover the area, so it's quite not a big space, but it's big enough where I have to be more than just a couple brush strokes. So mix up enough color, and get the clean brush, the clean water. And load the brush. And I'm going to go in and just put in some sky. Here, I'm going to start from the building. I'm going to put a light blue sky. Paint around the trees. Now I can paint over. This is dry here, so I can brush stroke across those colors a little bit, and it won't move. That color won't move if it's dry. Okay. I'll leave some white paper, that's fine. And then I'll turn the paper around and go across this way. Again, as long as it's a dry paint, you can paint over top of it. If it was wet, it would move, it would blend. So right now, I'm going to put the blue in here, fill in this area. And then the last brush strokes are over here. And what I think I'll do is I'll lighten it up because remember I'm in the sun, so I want to be a much lighter value over here from the sun, from the source of the light. So the sky is very light blue going across, gets a little bit darker as it goes across. Even that shows the sun effect of the light. And put a little bit of blue in those leaf areas, just a little bit, just a touch of blue. Leave some of the whites. Okay, let me put the mat around that. Now what I suggest on a painting like this with a number one, I usually pick the mat that helps out the center of interest. In this case, the red barn against the green mat, and all that green around really makes the barn pop out. So I think that is the color I would use for the matting part. Okay. So I think that turned out pretty nice. So let's go back over here to the main camera. And okay, that was a very, very interesting painting. I enjoyed doing that. I did a lot of things on it, a lot of detail, and you can go back and replay some of those sections, and please try those out for yourself. I think you'll enjoy doing that little painting. A building, a couple buildings, a tree, a road, but there's shadow patterns involved and so forth. I had another painting I may show you to see what I did on that one. Let me pull you back. Now this painting here is dry, but basically the same idea. But what I did here on this one, I took the shadows across the road, which I would do in a second stage, and then I put another tree down here at the bottom to fill in this area down here at this corner here. Okay, to give a little more interest. You have to watch about the being parallel. Too much parallel, because it could be off at a different angle. But basically, have another element down here at the bottom, and the shadow pattern to go across the road to kind of break up the road colors a little bit. Okay, that was the basic idea. Same painting, painted very similar, except adding a couple extra things in addition to what I did on this one I showed in the demonstration. Okay, I want you to see that part, because when I did that one, I did some extra steps on it. I wanted you to see what's possible. And you can always add things to the painting, make little changes, build different colors. Remember the different seasons. In the fall, the trees will be a different color, and so forth. So you can always put flowers around the area. You can put flowers, you make a small garden and put flowers on the ground. You can have birds flying in the air. You can do all kinds of things. So I hope you enjoyed today's little demonstration. I'm going to remind you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and so you can be aware of my next videos. And also give me a thumbs up. That helps my rating on YouTube. So every little bit helps. So if you wouldn't mind, give me a thumbs up if you see the video and you like what you see. So you all take care and be safe and have a safe weekend. And I'll see you on the next video.